Hey, sports card fans, welcome back to another thrilling and heart-pounding episode of Two Guys, One Hobby. How you doing, Don?
I'm great. How are you, John?
Very good, very good. Nice that we're finally getting back into a little bit of a groove here with our episodes. Again, we don't, make anything set and standard, but we're getting back into the swing of things. So this is really nice.
Yeah, a little bit of a roll here, so that's good.
Yeah. Now it was your turn to invite someone onto the show, but before you introduce them, I need to warn the audience. This person is wild, crazy, unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get. Definitely does not have a smooth, silky radio voice. So just preparing everyone for the guest. So maybe you can go ahead and introduce him and. We'll
You
get
stole
going.
my line because I've said that about him from day one. But I used to listen to his podcast, and since the Eagles won the Super Bowl, why not have someone on who actually cares that they won? So got my guy here, John Keating from the 70s Show.
All right, welcome, John.
There he is.
Yes, fly Eagles fly. I'll say it and I'll get it out of the way.
Yes.
As a
Pennsylvania
really,
is
really
Eagles
hard
territory.
for me to say, but
yeah.
Well, you know what? I was rooting for Saquon, being a Penn State guy.
Yeah, see,
of course.
That was for me. I don't like the Chiefs. Okay, I wasn't rooting for the Chiefs. I'm a Cowboys fan. I can't root for the Eagles, but Saquon's on the Eagles, and I love Saquon. So I was extremely torn in watching the game and who to root for. I wanted him to do good, but I didn't want the Eagles to win. But I didn't want the Chiefs to win. I was in a whole big mess.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah,
you were pretty much 0 for 4 there, 0 for 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing really what I was hoping for is we had a little bit of an office pool going. And
you have a pool in your office?
Yeah. It's an Olympic sized pool.
Okay.
Yeah. And
gotta get in on
that. I was hoping, okay, if anything, I'll win a little bit of money. I got shut out. So I didn't even win like $25 or something like. So I'm like,
I'm pretty sure there was something that the bookies in PA is a legalized gambling state, lost $6.5 million or something.
Really?
Yeah. The rest of the country did well. I think New York killed it, but they lost a lot of money in PA. Philly fans aren't the brightest people, and they tend to bet with their hearts. And this time it just worked out, I guess. So.
Well, congratulations to all the Phillies fans. So,
I'll be the football, right? I mean, it's football, and I've stated many times that baseball kind of died for me in 1994, and football kind of filled that void for many, many years. So 2018 was a big deal, the biggest deal, obviously, but this feels good as spent a lot of time at the vet and in the link, sitting in the cold watching crappy teams. So it's fun when this happens.
Yeah. Well, I sort of had it first because I'm also in addition to being a Red Sox fan, I'm a Mets fan. So I had the pleasure of the Mets kicking the Phillies out of the playoffs. So I guess it's appropriate that I have to suck it up and.
Do you root for anyone in Pennsylvania?
Win the Super Bowl.
You have like the weirdest group of
Mets
teams
and the Red Sox.
The Mets, Red Sox, and Cowboys.
Yeah, wow.
That I know. Okay. I am the unicorn in Central Pennsylvania. It's just.
That's like saying you're a big John Mayer and a big Travis Kelce fan, and you like Taylor Swift. I don't know. You've got a lot of demons in your head, John.
I have a lot of conflicts going on up here.
I thought you were going to
make
say
a decision.
John Mayer. I thought you were going to say John Mayer. I can't speak John Mayer and Jerry Garcia, but
them too. Well, John Mayer plays for the Dead a lot.
That's what I mean.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So get that stuff straightened out. Get back to us. You're in wherever you are in the Highlands up there, so I guess you can pick your teams. But Don and I are kind of stuck with what we have. It's in our blood, supposedly.
That's true.
So, yeah.
See, I'm in Central Pennsylvania. I'm not east enough to be embedded in Philadelphia sports, and I'm not west enough to be embedded in Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of, I mean, I know a lot of like Baltimore Orioles fans, Washington
Right.
Commanders, I say Redskins fans.
The Redskins.
So there's like a hodgepodge right through the middle of the state, coming up from Maryland. You got a lot of people that live in South Central Pennsylvania, work in Maryland. And so there's that tie there. And it just, so.
Well, the Redskins used to have summer camp in Carlisle. So
my alma mater, Dickinson College.
Yeah, they had deep roots there. So they kind of carved out a little spot for themselves.
You got the Ravens close too.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I guess there's a Raven. The Colt. There's no more Colts fans in Maryland, I guess, right? They've all been weeded out by now. But it's it's the people that root for the Cowboys that are born and raised here that drive me crazy. I don't know what the same effect is for Don.
No, I don't get that either. I know a guy up the street, born and raised here in Pittsburgh, and he loves the Cowboys. Yeah. And he's around my age, so he grew up in the heyday of the 70s when we were awesome. I'm like, how is that possible?
That does surprise me.
Weak parents is what we live today. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. So that's it. That's a wrap.
That's it.
Yep,
we are done.
Okay. Just a little victory lap for the Eagles.
So if you haven't watched John's channel, he's big into the 70s, and we're all kind of around the same age. I think I'm older than both of you, but I only got John beat by a couple months, I believe.
We graduated the same year, but you have me beat by a couple months, yeah.
So obviously, we grew up in the 70s, but what has made you concentrate your channel on that and your hobby and your collection? I know you collect other things, but the 70s is your sweet spot.
The 70s, obviously, it's when I started, right in the middle of the 70s. I had older brothers that collected, and their collection, when we moved out of the city, was left on the front porch for many months. And I passed by it every day, didn't know the importance of it, looking at a Willie Mays, 73 Willie Mays card on the top of a massive box of cards. And one day it wasn't there. And then kind of had to figure it out myself. And luckily, Little League, we had a snack bar. We'd get cards, buy a pack, put them in our back pockets, chew the gum, all that stuff. I grew up in Philly, obviously, and we were able to go to games a lot. I come from a long line of people that would listen to games, which is people would shake their heads and say, people listen to sports radio, but I don't know if anybody actually listens to games. We would listen to games without any other kind of diversion, sitting on a front porch and just listening to a game on a summer, or going to bed at night listening to a game.
Were you right in the city of Philly, or were you in the suburbs?
I was born in the city, the Olney section, and we moved out. I was born in 68, moved out in 74, so spent 6 years there.
Okay.
And but my family, it's my mom's side that is responsible for all this. My dad was busy working. His parents were from Ireland, so there wasn't really a sporting connection there. My dad was born in the early 30s, so there was no sporting connection for him. But my mother's parents had been here, a lot longer and were born here. And it turns out they were Philadelphia A's fans. And that was surprising to me when I found out. But my mom at one point told me that, Philly was an A's town. And it's hard to believe when you grow up a Phillies fan, right? And
right.
The A's were never there. But, I think my grandfather, who saw, the $100,000 infield back in the day, Home Run Baker, Eddie Collins. So he lived through that dynasty. He lived through the late 20s and early 30s, right, with Lefty Grove and Jimmy Fox and all that stuff. So my grandparents had seen some stuff, which was pretty cool. I never got to talk to them about that because we just, would talk about Phillies. But, the Phillies were getting pretty good in the mid-70s, so a lot of interest there. My father, again, would work hard and provide for his family, which meant he was doing the books for a company that had season tickets for the Phillies. So we'd go down. My mother and I would sit at first base side, and my two brothers would sit on the third base side. So I spent a lot of time watching baseball with my mom in person. She obviously took me to all my games. We listened on the radio. So it was a pretty big deal. And the 70s was just fun for baseball. It was so colorful. It's big business now, which we kind of forget, which is also why, in 1994, I kind of, the emotion went out of it for me because it stopped being an emotional sport for many of the participants, both the owners and the players. So The 70s, though, were quite a time. And I used to say it all the time that think about it. We had free agency. We had AstroTurf. We had these new uniforms. We had mustaches. The card hobby was pretty fun. We were starting to realize that the cards were going to be around for a while. The late 70s, it all comes together with Dr. Jim's book, which turned me on to kind of the history of cards beyond the 70s. So a lot of things happened both on the field and off the field, as a collector and as a sports fan. So I don't think there was any other. Baseball had some great players for many decades, but it was pretty much the same thing year after year after year. And then the 70s came along and Finley and Steinbrenner and all that stuff. And it was just, to me, it was bonkers. It's just a different time.
Well, there were so many characters in the 70s. And what I tell people is we opened vintage when it was new.
Right. Absolutely.
Which is awesome when you look back at it. Obviously didn't know that then.
Yeah.
You were doing that. But
I consider that a badge of honor, Don, that we open vintage in real time. Not knowing it, but it's fun to. And think about when we were kids. We didn't realize the importance, but when we were kids, I'm talking about 5-6-year-olds. Willie Mays was playing, Hank Aaron was playing, Ernie Banks was wrapping things up, Bob Gibson. These are people that are, the sport still kind of revolves around their legacy.
Absolutely.
And it's an honor to have been born at that time when I could see, I went to the 1976 All-Star game and I saw some incredible players there, right? Not realizing again the importance at the time, but it was just incredible time to be a sports fan. Even outside of baseball, football was kind of coming out of this cave, right? And we look at the Steelers and the Cowboys of the 70s and stuff like that. It was just a really neat time for sports to emerge and get bigger. And now you can choose whatever you want. Back then, baseball was king. And now you can, my oldest son would probably say, I don't know, it's a toss up between football and basketball are his favorite sports, which would have been, nobody would have said that when we were on the playground when we were 10 years old.
No. I mean, my son, he's 19. His favorite team is the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's all he follows is the NBA.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you see Carolina or Duke or whatever? He's like, oh, I don't care.
Well, yeah. When we were kids, college basketball ruled basketball.
Oh, yeah.
And,
the Big East.
Yeah, the Big East. But even before that, right? Magic and Larry Bird and then UCLA. And, there was just, everybody, it's funny because I want to think that baseball is dying because it's kind of a big part of it died in me. You go to games, the games are packed, all that stuff, but the games are there for, commercial purposes. It almost seems like now, but back then, people would keep score. If you're in a crowd of 20,000 people, probably 3,000 or 4,000 were keeping score on, with a pencil and a pad. So it was a different time, but it was definitely a colorful and an interesting time. Stadiums were getting rounder, right?
Crazy.
What's that, John?
The uniforms of the 70s as well. You look at some of the cards. I just, I don't know if you saw, I just completed my 1978 top set. That was the first set I collected. And oh man, the big, the lapels and just the colors and designs of the uniforms. And wasn't it the White Sox one year in the 70s that wore the shorts for one game or something like that?
I mean, it was the sport itself and the management of it was so conservative. Like I said, everybody was wearing flannels or wools for decades and decades and decades. And then all of a sudden everything got turned upside down. I mean, it was a cultural revolution, right? Nothing, whatever happened off the field typically didn't matter on the field, but that changed in the late 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, Doc Ellis wearing curlers in his hair. And the powder blues of the Phillies and
Yeah,
Expos and
yeah,
Cardinals
yeah,
and the Astros and the Pirates had 38 different combinations with the
and
black and gold.
we had international teams for the first time, right?
Yeah,
right.
Late
yeah.
60s, and then in the mid, expansion again
With
in
Toronto.
77. Yeah, so baseball itself did a lot of fun and interesting things in the 70s, and the documentary Ken Burns doesn't give it enough credit, right? It kind of glossed over it, but there could be, in my opinion, just a nice documentary about that
I agree with you.
era. Kurt Flood will always be a hero to me for what he did, and all that stuff, and none of that again. That decade changed everything for better and for worse, or whatever. Now it's all about money, but it was an interesting time for.
Well, back then, someone like me who's a Pirates fan, you had a chance of your guys sticking around. I mean, there was free agency, the start of it, and trades where, the season hasn't even started and I've already given up on the year. Like, I don't care.
Right.
I'll watch Skeens pitch and that's it. Kind of like what you said. I'm like, we've got an owner who doesn't invest. Willie Starr, Joe Clemente, they would not have been lifelong Pirates. Schmidt with the Phillies, all those guys stay with those teams. Brett with the Royals.
Yep. There's a very real threat now. Well, I'm sorry. Back then, it was a very real threat of teams, folding up, and I mean, it happened. It even happened with the Seattle Pilots. That's how they became the Milwaukee Brewers. Nowadays, and I realized when the St. Louis Cardinals football team moved to Arizona, that I realized the whole thing, you couldn't lose money as an owner in football because they were playing in a college stadium with no parking concessions, no beer concessions, whatever, and just living off their TV money. That's when it became that's when I think everything started. You can't lose money as an owner anymore, right?
No.
It's just absolutely no matter where you're playing. You could be playing in my basement and you're gonna make money. So it kind of takes some of the creativity out of it. I know the leagues try to put in the salary caps and stuff like that, but it's still there's a lot. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say they've taken most of the creativity. It's all analytics and data driven now instead of nuanced and data informed. So it's there's a little less soul and passion in things, I guess, or a little less soul than there used to be. It seems in more ways than one, right? And it's what you want to invest in what you're willing to invest in. I feel like I want to invest less and less in kind of modern sports because of that. Whereas we're lucky that we have the cards from past decades and even centuries to keep us kind of neck deep in the hobby and stuff like that. It's
even with
that's
all
what
the
does it.
new rule changes. The NFL with the new kickoff rule.
Yes.
I don't watch a whole lot of football. The first time I saw, I'm like, what?
It looked like marching band practice. It reminded me of marching band practice in high school.
Yeah,
that's where.
And
everybody
now
was lined up.
with MLB, with all the every year they go, okay, let's come up with 2 or 3 crazy new rules and all this. You can't do this. Placing the runner on second base. I'm like, they've beyond the money aspect and all these big contracts and free agency and all that stuff. It seems that the heart of the game is changed. I mean, it's no longer, hey, let's watch 18 players play a game of baseball. It's turned into so much more and other things beyond just the pure game of baseball that a lot of us growing up, in the 70s and even into the 80s, just enjoyed the pure game. And now they're trying to make it faster because of people's attention spans and all this other stuff.
You know what it reminds me? It reminds me of card collecting, when they have to manufacture interest in order to get you interested. They have to get you hooked on a chase, and if they have the game didn't change that much. The rules of the game didn't change too much for a very long time because the interest, it was self-generated on the field. If they have to manufacture that interest on the field and in the card shops, then maybe either you're a fool for buying into it, or you're a fool for buying into it. It's just, yeah, it's not organic. And
can you imagine if Topps came out with a set with all base and just some regular inserts that you find maybe every 1 or 2 packs, like in, 88 Tops or something like that, that you'll get maybe just a hand, no autographs, no game use stuff, everything base, and you'd be excited to get a base Shohei Ohtani card, and that was the big hit from the box. Just can you imagine the drop off probably in collector? They wouldn't buy they'd be like, well, we don't want to buy that product.
yeah, people are chasing a high, right?
Yeah,
They're
That's
chasing
exactly
a
what
high,
it
and
is.
it's a temporary feeling. I was walking the dog today, and I do it's one of the 2 places I do my best thinking, and I was thinking about, like, what if they loaded the crap out of packs with insert cards, and there was only
No
one
pun
base,
intended.
and
Where
what?
the other
Yeah,
best place you think is.
exactly. But what if they loaded the pack up with inserts and there was only one base card in there? What would that do to the base set,
One
right?
base card.
People would collect the base set. Like,
Well, of course.
you
because the
put
base
9
would be the
cards,
super short print. It was
put 9 serial numbered cards in there, and then put a base card in there with no serial number, and it would be akin to like Mars crashing into the Earth. Like the whole thing would just disappear. The whole hobby, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. So yeah.
Yep.
But as I say, every card I want has already been made. So if they stop the presses tonight, I'm okay. And,
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And that's not. It's just that there's plenty out there. I mean, I have plenty of cards I have in my basement right now, probably close to 300,000 cards from, last week to, early 20th century, late 19th century. So it doesn't matter to me. There's plenty to do out there, plenty of sports to collect, non-sports to collect, and cards. So whatever they do, I have has no bearing on what I do tomorrow morning.
Now, do you have all the sets from the 70s completed?
I have all the sets from the 70s. So
Okay.
let me rephrase that. I have all the baseball sets from the 70s.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I have some of the I have 70, I have 71, I have 73 football, I have 79 football. I have a lot of the football ones. I'm probably about and the ones I don't have complete, I'm pretty close to. I have some complete hockey sets. Basketball is a tough one because basketball, they were all over the place in the 70s with basketball. Yeah. Big cards, small cards, some years, ABA, NBA, ABA, and NBA. It was basketball was a crazy, crazy time for collecting, and basketball was, even into the 60s, there weren't a lot of sets for basketball. And,
Right.
that shows you where the popularity of basketball was back then. We have, society wise, there was a racial aspect and a bias against it, but there was also just, it shows you how far down the pecking order things were when they weren't even making sets. Even in the 80s, there's a couple of years where they didn't make sets. So it's basketball is always an interesting one. But I do have, I have that. I have oddball sets that you wouldn't even probably know existed. I just had one come in yesterday. And it just, there's so much in the 70s. There's factory sets that came out for the first time. There's traded sets that came out for the first time, and stopped doing the series stuff. So so much fun there. And the 60s, oddly enough, were like chock full of inserts. Like they were doing everything they could to get you to buy the packs of gum. And then most of that stopped in the 70s, but there was a lot of cool little stuff, test issues and stuff like the minis, and there were some posters and all sorts of fun stuff. We started getting a lot of food issues, right? Kellogg's and Burger King.
I was just going to go there.
Yeah,
that's a great memory of mine. Is having my mom take me to the grocery store, and I'm sitting there looking at the boxes.
Hostess,
I'm
right?
looking purely for pirates.
Yeah. You can get them down several aisles. Yeah, you can get them in the potato chip aisle. You can get them down the snack cake aisle. You can get them in the cereal aisle. The discs, MSA, Mike Schechter and Associates started making all sorts of discs, which are really fun because some are, printed on, such as Holiday Inn logos. Some just have stamps on the back of some local ice cream shop. So much fun stuff happening. There was obviously, baseball was going through some changes, but the hobby, because of Topps, and Fleer kept on poking the bear, and
We got to show some food cards.
there you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
Richie Zisk. Oh, he's not a pirate there, is he?
No, but look who
that's
is.
an interesting one. Gossage is, yeah.
But you can tell they're both got the airbrush. So you know they were wearing each other's uniforms.
Yeah. But it was like that stuff, Topps, I don't know whether it was an instance where it turned out where, you make things happen, you let things happen, and then the other third part is what just happened, right? And I feel like Topps might have been caught up in thinking that it was going to go on in perpetuity, but TCMA was poking the bear as well with SSPC, and then finally, Fleer.
It's funny
and
you said that. I was just looking at a couple of those.
Yeah, it's a fun set.
It is.
It reminds me. At 75, it says on the back, but they are 76. They came out.
Okay.
Yeah. So written all that stuff back there, written by Keith Olbermann from ESPN. He wrote all the copy on the back. Every one of those cards was taken at Shea Stadium, and if you don't know why that's weird, the Yankees played at Shea for 2 years.
That's right.
So every one of those cards, even the American Leagues, are Shea Stadium photos. So
were they renovating Yankee Stadium?
Renovating Yankee Stadium, yeah.
Here's one for you, John.
Yeah, the Bull. There he is.
I really liked this guy growing up.
Yeah.
I hated what he did to the Pirates, but I liked him.
He could hit a ball, that guy. Couldn't play left field to save his life, but he could hit a ball. Yeah, Richie Allen. Yep. That's so it's like there's all sorts of stuff like that, top suit SSPC. And the reason they were SSPC was because they didn't want TCMA to get blamed for anything. It was the same company essentially, and anyway, it's all that stuff was, and that was released as a whole set, which was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, even though Topps did it in '74 with a JCPenney set, that was released as a whole set, which is even weirder now because oddly enough, it's harder to complete sets that were released as sets because people pick out the Bretts and the Eckersleys and the Stars.
That's what I did. I just bought.
And then you're left with a whole bunch of commons, right? Yeah. So then you get putting a set together becomes a little bit of a chore because a lot of those sets might have been cherry picked because they were, they sat on the shelves for many decades. Like it wasn't in vogue, but in the last couple of years.
Do you know how they were distributed?
A mail order, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of this, whatever the Sports Collectors magazine or something like that. Mike Aaronstein ran that whole thing, so a lot of it was mail order, and like I said, sold at sets. The TCMA stuff is great because that's based off of same gang. It's based off of a trove of photos that they purchased of the old timers. So from the early beginnings of baseball on up, they would release these sets, like different teams or different decade sets, the 30s, the 40s, and 50s, and they had the rights to all the photos, so they would release cards, and it was just really fun. I mean, they also made their mark in minor leagues. That's where we start to see a lot of minor league cards. Mm-hmm. I don't think that I think that there's a big gap in minor league cards from the Z-Nuts in the 20s and 30s on up to the 70s. I think the 70s is when they really started firing up the presses again for the most part, and getting minor league sets. So TCMA was at the forefront of that as well. So you
mentioned earlier, you said Topps JCPenney set. I'm not familiar
74.
With that.
Yeah, it was a factory set in theory that you could buy from the JCPenney catalog.
Oh, okay.
Very. I haven't seen any out in the wild. Every now and then you see a box or a set in a box, but it's not something you would see at every show.
Is there something different on them that you can identify?
I don't think so. No, it's the same. It would be the same, but it's the box with the set in them. Nothing fancy, no stamp or anything like that. But one of the reasons the delineations I make in vintage is because 1980 being the end of it, because in 81 all hell breaks loose with the other manufacturers, and we get the traded sets and we get the factory sets eventually, and that's how people start buying cards in that manner. So it's easy, like I said, to kind of that 80 set seems to work out. It's the last year, just Topps. It's a beautiful classic design. And so anyway, that's kind of it's a slam dunk for me to but everybody, people are calling 1987 and 1992 vintage now for whatever reason. So
do you have a favorite set from the 80s baseball?
Well, if you say the 80s, I will say 1980 tops because I
I
said
meant
that
70s. Did I say 80s?
70s.
I
You
meant
did say
70s.
80s.
Sorry. I
I
meant 70s.
do, and it's probably not what you think. It's probably, if I had to pick the top three, it's probably 1970 football, 1970, 70 or 71, 72 hockey, or 72, 73 hockey. Just beautiful sets in my mind.
Okay.
And with baseball, though, I do love it's weird. I like the plainness of 70. I know it doesn't get a lot of credibility, but it's gray, and
Right.
gray is one of my favorite colors, but it's got a lot of bat rack photos in it, which is pretty cool. You didn't see a lot of that. So if you're a freak for baseball bats, that's your set there. 75 though is probably when I really, I remember 75 in real time. So that probably has a big
Right.
impact on me. I have that set. I have the mini set now, so I've got a lot of the 75s.
I never got into the minis. I know a lot of people love them, but it just
I
never
just
did
got the
anything.
set recently, but I've had a bunch of the minis. Minis are hard to collect because that was a test issue. So, putting together sets hard enough, but if you go to a card show, you can do it. From the 70s, a lot of the really good vintage dealers, you could still buy a bunch of singles like that from. But the 75 stuff, because it was test issue, regional, and stuff like that, so you can drive yourself crazy. And I come across every couple shows I'll buy a mini, but that's no way to, that's no way to go. So I finally just bought the whole set.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same set, it's just smaller, and
I like the look of it. I think I
yeah.
only have one mini, and it's a graded Kari Stremski for my extended player run.
It's got the greatest comment ever made as well, the Herb Washington. So
Yeah, that's true.
and I have a theory on why it was smaller. Obviously, it's more cost effective to manufacture, but I think like they were thinking, our target audience, their hands are small. So let's see if we could shrink it down. And for whatever reason, it didn't stick. I don't know why, but it seems like we could have turned.
I thought of that.
We could have turned a corner in 75 where our cards would have been smaller, and we would not have known the logic behind it, other than maybe somebody said it's more cost effective and less ink, less cardboard, all that fun stuff, less everything.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, it never stuck. So you look at the 50s where they were all over the place in the early 50s, and
the Bowmans.
The Bowmans, and they didn't settle down till 57, right? So yeah, it's curious as to how we ended up not getting smaller cards, but here we are.
I might put the 76 tops traded Oscar Gamble up against Herb Washington.
Great
one of the
card.
greatest common cards ever.
Well, I mean, Oscar Gamble was a special player. I think he was he can be considered a minor star. But yeah, that's a cool card. You're absolutely right. And that, an interesting thing about those traded sets are that they were integrated into packs later on in the season. They weren't either 74 or 76 were not series releases, but Topps put them in later on. They just made them part of the print run later on.
Right.
So, which is kind of cool. It's I guess it would consider an update series, but it was part of the regular cards as well. So you can get it with card number one.
They're not super like short prints, like you said, not like the old high number series from like the 60s cards.
No, and either 74 or 76, there wasn't really, it wasn't really any players that you absolutely had to have. There was just you have your Dave Cashes.
Willie Randolph, I think wasn't
Willie Randolph was a big deal. Yeah, I think Bobby Bonds was in there, and
he was.
But it
Ken
was.
Brett.
You have to look at Ken Brett. You have to look at the context as well. This is when free agency was starting to fire up. So there was a very real. More so, which is why 74 is kind of weird to me because it wasn't free agency, but 76, like there was team people were changing teams late.
But
in
those
the
guys were all traded though, right? Because they came out in the middle.
Yeah,
of
I
the
guess
season.
so. Yeah, you know what? I guess you're right because but a lot of those transactions, even the free agency ones would have happened later on. That's a good point though, Don. Like maybe that was kind of like Topps didn't want to ruffle the feathers and say, since they know who buttered their bread. They didn't want to say free agency this, free agency that, and they just highlighted the trades so that they didn't make light of what the owners were obviously not happy about free agency. So
Right.
yeah, that's a good point. They just highlighted the trades, which were rather compared to free agency movement like Reggie Jackson or somebody like that, it was rather pedestrian compared to the free agency changes. So
yeah.
Tom House, if you have your Tom House 76 traded, John, from your beloved Red Sox, you can see his hat is like airbrushed pink. It's not even, they were wearing the red hats back then, the Red Sox, but they did such a bad job airbrushing that it comes out pink. So you might want to get yourself a pink sock hat.
Yeah. Fergie Jenkins, wasn't he in the 76?
Yeah. Texas. I think, what do you want from the
I don't
Cubs
know
to
if
Texas?
one,
I think. Yeah.
I have it. I have that one somewhere graded, and I think that one's airbrushed a little bit as well.
They all are, because they would not have had photos. Like the only time you have in the 70s where you have like authentic traded cards and new uniforms would have been the late series 72 with Joe Morgan and Carlton and Beck Davalillo and those guys. Those guys were photographed in spring training in their new uniforms.
Gotcha.
And distributed in whatever the 6 or 7 series. But otherwise, 74 and 76 they're all airbrushed.
Yeah.
I'm just looking. I guess I don't have that one.
Yeah.
But here's a sleeve of them.
Look at Oscar Gamble, Jim Cott there, right?
There's Fergie that you're talking about.
Dusty Baker, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Mickey Rivers.
Yeah, some good stuff in there, again, all airbrush, but some fun stuff. But that's, we were no, it was airbrushing was not new to the scene, but boy, they sure did go a little bonkers on those traded sets. That's for sure.
I didn't know the difference back then.
No, nobody knew. You didn't know.
Here's what I did, and I don't know, I have 4 brothers, so I can relate to you, John, but I always put my initial on the back of them.
Backwards D. Yeah, that was
so
a
my
thing,
brother.
Man.
So my brother wouldn't steal my cards. Now I wish he could take these ones, and actually I don't, because it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, I have, like, I'm fortunate to have a lot of cards in my basement that I pulled out of packs in the 70s. My 1980 set. I had thousands and thousands of those. So that whole set is pack pulled by me, most likely bought at Piazza's Delicatessen about a mile from my house. And there's a connection there. She's a German immigrant, married a Piazza, and somehow they're related to Mike Piazza. So it's interesting. And I didn't know that at the time back then, but yeah. So
I thought when Piazza first came into the majors that he had a Philly connection with his family.
Well, he's from Philly. Yeah, he's from like 5 miles down the road, Phoenixville, PA. And he, in Lasorda, my bus stop in high school, every day I look across and the mailbox said Lasorda. It was one of Tommy Lasorda's brothers. So Tommy's from Norristown, all that stuff. So yeah, there's a connection there. But his dad made his money in auto dealerships and stuff like that. So and I think he was like,
have you ever seen that video of Piazza hitting in high school and
Ted Williams? Yeah. Again, that's not too far away from here that happened. So yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. And he was still, imagine you, that's like, you want to be a drummer and your dad brings home John Bonham or Neil Peart from Rush, like, and Ted's got to say nice things about Piazza, right? And in this video or whatever, but the reality was nobody really thought much of him, I guess, right? He drafted way down on the list as a favor. So yeah, a lot of history and stories in those cards that we bought. Like I said, I'm looking at something here which I look at every day, which means nothing to anybody other than when I was 12 years old. This is where I kept my most valuable cards, right? It's just it's an index card holder.
Yep.
Which people would say, what does that do these days? But we had crap in our house like adding machines and Rolodexes and stuff like this that And this sits with me and every day, and it's got top loaders in it right now. I don't know why, but it's something I've had for most of my collecting journey. So, little stuff like that, man. Life was a lot
cool.
simpler.
I still have back in the day. Again, I started collecting in '78, a couple years later than you guys. But when I first collected, I stored them literally in shoe boxes.
Yep.
And I still have the I'm trying to remember the name of the shoe brand.
Keds?
No, it was in the blue box and it had like wings or something,
Pony?
something. Huh?
Pony?
No. Anyway,
Brooks.
The box, of course, because of my shoes.
Crocs. Were they Crocs, John?
Like this.
They weren't Crocs. They weren't
Crocs.
Crocs.
Had Crocs back then.
No. But the blue shoe box, I still have.
That's interesting.
From when I stored like my 70s, early 80s cards, because I remember on the side of the lid I wrote like 1979 to 82, something like that.
Right.
And it's right now it's in a storage box in my basement, but I still have that little shoe box that I stored my cards in.
That's incredible, man. You got to put some Wade Boggs stuff in there, huh?
Yeah.
Be fun. Yeah. So
yep.
I'll show you this real quick. This is another thing I look at every day. This is me at the 76 All-Star game. And there's another test issue, 77 cloth stickers, right?
Yep.
And one of the puzzles that come with that are the 76 All-Star photos from the American and National League. And I vividly recall them taking the the team pictures right in front of me on the first base line. So I have that, that whole set around here somewhere. Someday maybe I'll put the pieces of puzzles together and hang them up. It'd be fun to see. But I was there when that was taken, and it's again, another little thing that I have my roots in the 70s, and that's another example of why. So.
Well, speaking of the 70s, I have some trivia questions here. We'll see if we can get them through them fairly quickly, because then I want to pivot and maybe we can talk about something else that happened not too long ago that was big in the hobby, and you played a critical role in it. But I'll try to go through these questions pretty quickly here. So the first one is, who was the only team to have 4 players drive in 100 or more runs during the same season, and yet what year was it? So it's from the 70s. The only team to have 4 players drive in 100 or more runs during the same season, and what year was it?
I gotta guess, but I'm gonna let John go first.
Yeah, I mean, my first inclination is a Dodgers team, because they had 4 guys with 30 home runs. But for some reason, I probably should remember that if they also had 100 RBIs.
Yeah.
Give me a second here. It's not the Phillies. They probably would have had 2 people doing that. Greatest third baseman.
An American League team.
There you go. So I'm way off.
That threw mine out.
Way off.
I'm way off. Reds.
Yeah, 75. The 76 Reds, by the way. Sorry maybe this will earn me back some points. Greatest offensive team ever. If you look at their stats, their team stats, they led both leagues in every category except stolen bases.
Wow.
So think of all the offensive stats. There are single, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, runs, average, walk, all, on base. They led across the board. So it wasn't them. American League team, RBIs. It wasn't the 79 Angels, who had Don Baylor. Man, that's tough, because the stats weren't flying back then in the 70s like they kind of were in the early 90s, when the Indians could put Albert Bell and Manny Ramirez and Jim Tomei up, and
I'm thinking Oakland A's maybe.
No, because they had a lot of soft hitting guys. I don't mean soft. I'm just talking about guys who would hit 19
Rudy and Reggie,
Sal Bando. I feel like you want to tell me it's the Boston Red Sox with Yaz, Rice, Lynn, and Fisk.
You're darn close. The 77 Red Sox, Rice, Yastrzemski, Fisk, and Butch Hobson.
Butch Hobson, third baseman. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't do
Yeah.
too bad on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other
Should've
than
known
having
it
the
was
wrong
Red
league.
Sox.
Other than having the wrong
Yep.
league.
All right. This one's a little bit more specific, so maybe you'll get this.
Okay.
Who quietly won 20 games for the Yankees in 1978, easily being overshadowed by Ron Guidry's Cy Young performance?
78.
78 Yankees.
I'm trying to think. It would not be Don Gullett because maybe he got
That's who
hurt.
I was going to guess.
I feel like he may have gotten hurt. He was their, and it wasn't Catfish. He wouldn't have done anything quietly, right?
Right.
Oh shoot, I know this. Rudy York? No, it's not Rudy York, is it?
No.
Dick Tidrow?
No. It was Ed Figueroa.
Ed Figueroa. Dang it.
He went 20-9.
That's who I was thinking.
I thought it was
20-9.
Catfish Hunter.
Yeah.
I thought that it was been Catfish Hunter.
I feel like Gullett had his big year in 77.
Mm.
And then he got injured, but he had a decent year. So that's why when you said 78, right? Is that what you said? Yeah, that's why I
78.
thought okay. All right, we're 0 for 2, Don.
All right.
Not even close.
What major league season, again, this is from the 70s, what major league season saw only 4 players reach 100 or more runs scored for the year, a low mark for the decade?
I have no idea.
Coincidentally, all were from the same league.
I feel like saying 70.
You're close.
100 runs scored.
Only 4 players reached 100 or more runs scored for the year.
71 National League.
71 National League. Very good.
Rico Cardi, he had to be one of the guys that scored 100 runs.
No.
Okay.
So we got the National League in 1971. Only 4 players reaching 100 or more runs scored for the year.
Let's see who is it.
I think we mentioned both 2 of the players so far in our conversation.
Okay, so Rudy York and Don Gullett. I'm just kidding.
No.
Shoot.
I don't know.
So
I don't know the 4th one. I'm not familiar with the 4th
let us
one.
have it. Maybe we can talk to who these 4 chaps
Lou Brock.
Okay.
Bobby Bonds.
Bonds.
Willie Stargell.
Okay.
And Ralph Garr.
Ralph Garr was with the Braves.
Sox.
Yeah, I got him and Rico Cardi switched around. Ralph Garr had a pretty good, decent career in the early 70s.
Yeah, he's a nice player.
Bobby Bonds, by the way,
I'm familiar with Ralph Garr.
I did like a half-assed, internal war diagnosis a couple of years back, and Bobby Bonds made, I think, the all 70s team in my metrics my Fugazi metrics that I use. He was apparently a terrible teammate and unreliable, but he was great on the field. Yeah.
Wonder where his son got it from.
His dad had to drink. In all fairness, his dad had a bad drinking problem, and I don't know whether it was tied to his childhood or his nerves, but like you put all those great 70s players together, he would be one of your starting outfielders in an all 70s team, which is crazy.
Yeah, he was a very good player. Just on a ton of teams.
Yep.
Which goes back to what you were saying, just not a great teammate, and they probably moved him a lot.
Yeah. All right, the 4th question. What season in the 70s saw the most players hit 40 or more home runs?
Trying to think of these leader cards. And I want to say Dave Kingman was involved, and Mike Schmidt was involved, and possibly Greg Luzinski.
Would Stargell been in there?
I feel like that would be late in Stargell's career. I just feel like that. Is it 70? Look, I'm trying to look at the leader card in my brain. Is it 75?
Nope.
Okay.
76.
And so far, the players that you've named so far are not on this list.
Holy crap.
Wow.
So this has to be early 70s then. And you're talking about Mays and Aaron.
Thanks.
And
no.
Well, all right. Is this the 1870s? Yeah. Interesting.
It's 1970.
Well,
6 players.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Yeah, don't tell us who they are.
Yeah,
6 players in 1970.
Was Dick Allen one of them?
I'm sorry, what?
I feel like Killebrew would have been one, Don. Maybe I'm
Yes.
wrong because he showed up on the leader cards. Dick Allen?
Killebrew's one.
No Dick Allen?
Nope.
What about Boog Powell?
Nope. I quickly mentioned the first one. You may not have heard me, but
Yeah, we did hear you. What did you say?
Yastrzemski.
Oh, Yaz. Yeah, of course.
So we got Yaz and Killebrew.
Uh-huh.
So there's 4 others. from
Frank Howard?
1970. Yes, Frank Howard.
Okay.
Frank Robinson?
Nope.
Al Kaline.
Nope.
No.
Those guys were all kind of towards the end of their career, but
Yeah, and Kaline was a guy, I believe he finished with 399 home runs or something.
someone like Willie Horton.
No, I think 2, if I'm not mistaken, were teammates.
McCovey?
Nope.
Oh, that was a good guess.
Yeah.
What league? Give me a league.
National. All 3 remaining ones, National League.
Okay.
National League.
Bench would not have had a
Bench.
teammate.
Yes.
But,
Yep.
Bench is one of them.
Bench is the 4th. Yep. So you got 2
Okay.
more.
And one of these guys remaining was Bench's teammates?
I think so. In
Is it
1970,
Lee May?
I could be wrong, but
would you say it's not Lee May then? Because that's
No.
the only guy I think that would have done that.
George Foster wasn't in the league then, right?
Or Perez. I don't know.
Yeah, Tony Perez.
Okay.
Right.
George
So
Foster would have been. He broke in with the Giants. 71
Right.
was
That's
one
true.
more. He was this last guy was a national leaguer.
Yep.
It wasn't like again. I try to picture these leader cards, the 71 leader cards.
Hall of Famer.
That's Santo
Hall
or
of
Banks.
Fame.
Close.
Banks.
Thanks.
Nope.
Did they cover Billy Williams?
Yes.
I love Billy Williams. Best smile in baseball.
So Yastrzemski, Perez, Bench, Billy Williams, Frank Howard, and Harmon Killebrew. 6 players in 1970 all hit
That was good.
40 or more home runs.
That's fun. I mean, can you name the people from 2008 or 2011? Yeah.
Nope.
I can't name the ones from the 70s, but still, it's fun to talk about these
That's
guys.
like because of those cards, I could tell you, like I know who Larry Christensen is.
Yeah.
And, you tell me now, I'm like, I don't know who. I don't even know half the guys on the Pirates.
Well, like I was saying earlier, like that golden age was wrapping up. And, even the guys in the 60s, like Billy Williams started in the early 60s, like those leader cards in the 60s. And again, like those leader cards that would be 71. The only one not in the Hall of Fame, I think you mentioned maybe Frank Howard, but still that guy played a big part in baseball back in that time. So it's just a lot of fun and nostalgia there. And there's no Adrian Gonzalez or Brady Andersons or anything like that. These guys were, you knew what their job was to hit. Frank Howard's job was to hit home runs. Okay.
Yep.
And don't bother me about anything else. And just good times.
Yep. All right. The last question. What player, and this is very specific here. So what player recorded only 74 runs scored in a season that saw him collect 200 or more hits, the lowest total in the decade? So you had someone who hit more than 200 hits, but only scored 74 runs.
Can't be Brock. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, it's not Brock.
The only one I would think Pete Rose.
I heard the name before, but it's not a household name.
I was going to say Pete Rose or Clemente.
Because he hit. Pete Rose got 200 hits every year.
Yeah,
I'm thinking there has to be a year where maybe
it's
they
not a Hall of
him.
Famer.
Yeah.
It's not even someone I would consider even the Hall of very good. I mean, it's a somewhat obscure name. I've heard of it, but I don't know much about him.
Give me a team.
Yeah, you got to know.
I don't know what team he played. It doesn't say.
No.
And I don't know enough about this player to know what team he played for.
And you don't know what first half or the latter half, right? It's not Gary Templeton, is it?
It was in 1976. I'll give you that.
All right. Gary Templeton, I would have thought too.
Yeah.
Gary Templeton didn't mind getting on base, but he didn't. His effort stopped once he got on base. 76, you say?
Yep.
Frank White.
Oh, Frank White would have been good.
Now, if there was a 1976 leaders that had all the hits on the back,
the
you could
futility of base running futility leaders. Man. Because you figure a guy with 200 something hits has to have a decent batting average. And if he only got 74 runs scored, that means he has to be a little bit further down in the lineup. That's just a hypothesis.
Either that, or he may have been on a team that just
didn't score runs.
Didn't score a lot of runs, and so maybe he had a lot of singles, but no one else in the lineup could actually hit.
Yeah.
How about Jose Cruz?
No.
That was a team that was a team that didn't have a lot of home runs. That's for sure. The Astros.
Yeah.
Man.
You got to give us another hint. Maybe initials or something.
Let me see. Let me look up.
Yeah, Google a player.
The team that he played for.
Yeah.
And see if I can.
We might get a hit on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good guesses there, Don. Frank White would have been a sleeper, but I'm sure John would have heard of him.
You never know, John.
You never know. You're right. Red Sox / Mets / Cowboys fan.
All right. In
Slippery Rock.
His 76 tops card was with the Giants. Now I don't know if
not Billy North.
No.
He was with the A's.
He would have been a Cub and an A, but he eventually ended up with the Giants because he was.
Let me see if he even played
Chris
in 70s. Okay, now I need to see the back of the card to see, because in his 77 card, he was shown playing on the Braves. In his 76 card, he was listed as playing for the Giants.
Giants to Braves.
Not Gary Matthews.
Oh, that's a good guess.
Trying to think.
Giants, Braves. He said it wasn't. No, Willie McCovey never played for the Braves. Man.
What position?
And then in 78, he was shown playing for the Mets.
Lenny Randall.
So he played for the Braves, the Giants, and the Mets?
Yeah.
Is it Lenny Randall?
Lenny Randall, by the way, another great athlete from the 70s who killed a pitcher.
I was just going to say when he laid that bunt down.
That stuff doesn't
wait a
happen.
minute. Wait a minute. What is
Elliot Maddox?
No, Elliot Maddox was
what
a
is
Yankee.
going on here? That can't be right.
John's just making shit up.
Fugazi.
No, can't get it right.
No. So, in 75, this is, oh my gosh. This guy is becoming more and more interesting now. From the quiz, it looks like they misspelled it a little bit, but this is the only, this has to be it. His 75 tops card, he was shown playing for the Phillies at first base.
Willie Montanez.
That would be Willie Montanez.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I could see that. I'm surprised he got 200 hits. I know he had 27 home runs for the Phillies. I think that was his peak power.
Okay.
I didn't realize he was on 4 different teams in 4 different years.
He did play for all those teams. Yeah.
When I was looking up his cards, they had a 78 tops of him on the Mets, and then there was another 78 tops, same spelling of the guy's name. I can't believe there are two that spelled the same for the Braves.
Did you flip them over? Is one an OPG?
See, I don't know. I don't know if you can. I may not be able to see it here, but there's the.
That looks like Willie Montanez. Yeah, look at that jacket. They don't make
the Braves, right? Anymore. But then, if you go down here, same spelling.
That's Willie.
But it's the Mets. I'm sorry for the light.
I'm wondering if one's an OPG. Now you have to have me look here.
Yeah, I don't know.
He used to flip his bat when he came to.
Oh yeah.
Came to the plate. It was 78.
Yeah.
His his OPG and his tops are both Braves, but check this out. There's a 1978 Topps Zest card, number 4, as him as a Met. So that's a Topps Zest.
So, wow.
I think Willie had a cup of coffee with the Pirates as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Got around, man. Probably got kids all over the Northeast corridor.
Right.
Yeah.
Little Willies. Yeah.
Yeah, so, he certainly got around. I kept seeing all these cards and on a different team every year.
Yeah, he had 30 home runs for the Phillies. I screwed that up, I think.
Wow.
30 home runs, 99 RBIs. Yeah, that's I got some horrible news for you. I don't see him having 200 hits for anybody, according to his Zest card.
Really? It said he
So-
had 200 in 1976. He had 206 hits while only scoring 74 runs. So I'm only going off of the website that I got these questions off
I
of.
got you. So let me look at something. 76, we say?
Yeah.
Problem with 76 is he played for the Braves, and the Giants.
Oh, so combined.
So
That's
combined, you're right. He
interesting.
had 71 for the Giants and 135 for the Braves. So yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy for a guy to get traded in a season like that, right? Batted 309
Yeah,
for one team and 321 for another.
maybe that's how it corresponded to the not the number of
Yeah.
runs or something.
Interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 74 runs. He was first
I did
baseman.
good then with my trivia
You did
questions. Thank
great.
you for
They're both great.
conversation.
Yeah. And we learned about Zest cards as well, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
fun
So
stuff.
I we're coming up on an hour here. I know we can go a little bit past, but what I was going to get into, I'm not sure if we could maybe do in 10, 15 minutes. Maybe you can just give your perspective on it. But you were instrumental, and I don't think had a lot of you were given some credit, obviously, by the bigger players involved, but the mass amount of attention was directed to the cards themselves. But you were the one who put this whole Grail collection, or let people know that this was out there. And so would love to know sort of your side. Maybe not get into all the details. Maybe you can reserve it for another future episode. But just quickly, your background, because the whole thing's fascinating. But you were at the ground level at the beginning of this whole Grail collection. So maybe you can just tell us briefly your role in it.
Yeah. So one thing that's fascinating is this collection lived about a mile away from where I live, and I had been past the house many times. My kids had friends in neighborhoods, so spent a lot of time driving through the neighborhood, same school district, all that fun stuff. I get a call after hours from my LCS owner, who I have a good relationship with, and he is a junk wax era baby, and not he knows enough about the hobby and all that stuff, but he loves to sell the new stuff. So he called me up. I went over he says, and him and I talk a lot, and this is the only time he says, you have to come over here right now. So I went over to the store, and in the store was a pile of cards, none of them graded, and it was stuff you don't normally see. I mean, we go to card shows and we see a lot of stuff. We're kind of jaded. We still love the cards, but we're kind of jaded. A full set of DeLongs, all the Ruths and Garrigs from the Gowdy sets and multiples and stuff like that, and all sorts of interesting things. So I saw enough to know that they were real, because, like, you can tell, but also all the telltale signs were there for the Gowdies. There's bleed through in the Gowdies and all that stuff. And again, like, it's not often you see just people rolling in with DeLongs, and one of them had some paper loss. And it's just like, it all made sense.
Right.
The guy, it all made sense. So I told the LCS owner, you have to take these home with you. The gentleman dropped them off to say, hey, give me a price. He had sent them somewhere else. I think he sent them to Dean's Cards, and Dean's Card lowballed him quite a bit. And so I said, you have to take these home with you. Don't leave these in the store, because if something were to happen out of your control, you would, anyway. So he did. And then there was like I said, a couple of DeLong Garrigs in there. So I called Moynihan and took a picture, and I know it was his card, and told him that night, I said, listen, whatever happens here, my goal is to make sure you end up with one of these DeLong Garrigs, right? Whether I go in with the LCS to buy it or this or that or whatever, whether I'm involved or not, I don't know. But that was my goal, because, that was his supposed Grail card. And there were so many cards in there, all your tobacco cards and all that stuff. What was interesting and fascinating about the collection, and the guy brought everything in. That was just a taste. The guy brought everything in, and it was a whole bunch of stuff from the 30s. and early 40s, you know, from the Cashins to the Goudies to all the play balls and all that stuff. And again, some tobacco cards, but those were outliers. And then there was a whole bunch of stuff from the 60s and early 70s that was in perfect condition. So it was a son who was selling these cards. And when I say son, the gentleman was, you know, probably 70 something years old. And it was his father's collection as well, which explains the stuff from the 30s and all that stuff. So,
and the gap of the 50s.
Yeah, exactly. Now there was some 50s stuff in there. I think there was I think there was it ended up being graded an 8, an Ernie Banks rookie. So I mean, you don't see too many Ernie Banks rookies.
Yeah, but
so
like
there
was
was
only 1 or 2 52 tops cards.
there was some guy. Yeah, there was some stuff that the son had done or the father had done at some point where they started going to card shows and buying.
I think a
buying
Richie
some
Ashburn.
things.
There may have been
Yeah, exactly. And Philly. I mean, it makes sense, Phillies.
Yep,
but it was like there was a Yaz rookie in there, a McCovey rookie, some Rose rookies. But anyway, it was a nice chunk of like great cards, and the stuff from the 60s and early 70s was still pack fresh, like up to 73. There was a 73 wax box with the cards put back in the box after they'd been opened, and the cards were still pristine. You know, however many Thurman Munson rookies and Reggie rookies and all that stuff. So anyway, you know, I try to work out a deal with the LCS owner, like, hey, I'll fly down to SGC to get these graded and authenticated before you make an offer for the collection and all that stuff. So turns out he flew down and did it on his own, and then he sends me from the Uber on the way to the airport from SGC. He sends me a list of the grades, so everything was, you know, everything was authentic. A couple things. Legit, I should say. A couple of things got an A because of a pinhole or somebody tried to fill in. I think one of the 33 Garrigs, somebody tried to, you know, he tried to fill it in, you know, the pinhole with something. But a lot of these things graded out pretty good. You know, those Roos and Garrigs graded out 3s and 4s and stuff like that. So Christy Mathewson, you know, error card from the I guess the T205 set. So anyway, you know, I'm talking to the LCS owner, and Moynihan's saying we have to get this thing and all this stuff. So, you know, it was a kind of a delicate dance to find out what everybody's roles in. My role, I don't like to mix money with the hobby. It takes money to hobby, but I don't like money to get in the way of my hobbying, meaning I don't want to have to make a decision where I get you know, should I sell this card or keep this card? And that's what would have been the case had I had money in this deal. I would have had to say goodbye to cards I didn't want to. So we work out a deal. Chris, you know, I had to essentially convince the dealer why selling this in one chunk at, you know, it was a 6-figure deal. Why selling it at this chunk would make more sense for you. It would take him years to liquidate this. And keep scratching back, whereas we can give him a chunk of money for him to have, and he can do whatever the heck he wants, right? So essentially that's what happened. You know, it was a little psychological, you know, pressure put on him, not in a bad way, but just like, hey, it makes more sense to do it this way. He has cards that have sat on the sorting table for 2 years. I go in there, they're still there. He's, you know, so it made sense. You know, there is the maximize versus optimize situation. You know, he could maximize his profit by continuing to sell stuff, or he could optimize his time for his money. And so it was a great deal for him. Turned out it was a great deal for the other two chaps as well. It was a great deal for me. I mean, there was some stuff in there that you don't normally see. And the thing that, you know, I mean, there were stand-ups in there from 64. There was all sorts of crazy stuff. But one thing in there was a 400 count box of 72 tops high football, which you don't see in the wild. You don't see those in that volume in the wild. I mean, it was like a $10,000 box of cards, right? And you just don't see that. And they were in perfect condition. So a lot of little nuggets in there. I got some great cards out of it. You know, I'm a set builder, so I got a lot of great cards out of it. I didn't get, you know, I didn't get any cards I'm going to wear on a gold chain around my neck because it's not my style. But it's like I have, my collection's a lot better than it was previously. I like to tell people I grow grass, I don't grow rose bushes.
Yep.
My collection goes in all
Yeah.
directions, and it, maybe the grass is high in some spots. For the most part, though, it's pretty evenly spread across, both in, worth and in the amount of cards I have. I'm a set builder, like I said. So anyway, it was beneficial to everybody. It was a good time. The transaction took literally minutes. I had the bulk of the collection in my basement for several days, just to sort it out and get it ready and all that stuff. And then, the day of the deal, Chris came up, Mike flew up. I picked up Mike, called the dealer when I was 5 minutes from my house. He came down. Here's the money, and here's the whatever, the dozen or so cards he had taken down to SGC to get graded, the Gaudis and the DeLongs and all that stuff. So it was a quick deal, and then we spent the rest of the day sorting stuff out. A couple Kareem rookies in there. Just like it.
Yep.
It just never ended. And I will be. I'm not being. I'm being honest when I say I assume this happens every day. It doesn't happen to me every day, but I assume, like, collections like this, somebody's dealing with a collection like this every day, because you see a lot of stuff on. But apparently, it doesn't happen every day. But it certainly was fun. I mean, there was a full set of Gaudis in there, other than, minus the Napa Lajoie. I remember having Gaudis stacked up this high, a full set.
You just
which
had
is
to be in
crazy.
your basement, like, this is a dream, man. Like,
Yeah, it was cool.
How fun is this?
Yeah. I owned a full Gaudi set for like minutes of my life, but again, if that's something I had to make a decision on, like, oh, I need to sell this to get back to, and Mike and I, the more we got into it, the more I told him, hey, the goal here is to get you guys, because I would feel bad if I got somebody involved in the deal and had no stake in it, other than being the one who found the deal, no monetary stake. I would feel guilty if it was a loser, you know what I mean? And a loss for them. So my goal was always to, because you can look at collections, and Chris, that's what Chris Sewell is good at, can look at stuff and say, yeah, this is a good deal. Most of us mooks aren't used to processing that much information, and the columns and all that stuff. The columns, is the comma go here, or, oh no, move the comma two to the left. You're like, oh, okay. So, like, most of us don't have that capability. And then anyway, it all worked out and it was efficiently dealt with. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of cards, and they were distributed to people that I know, that most of us know. They were distributed to people like Greg Morris. So it was neat to see that stuff go out there and get into other people's collections and stuff like that. And I still have reminders of it being, in my basement, of stuff that, whether it's a couple series or a couple sets of the 70 Fleer Laughlins, it's like, it's fun seeing that stuff laying around still. It's still, the mess is still here. It's not a mess, but it's like the reminders are still out. They're out on my tables. They're out it me. And it was really fun to know that everybody did all right on the deal. I mean, people can tell you that the original guy got ripped off, but listen, you don't collect your entire life like that and not know what you have. It's not like this guy came upon, his uncle's stuff. This guy was a collector. His dad was a collector. He could have been sitting on $20 million for all we know. And that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to, the important thing to me was that it ended up in, I ended up with thousands of cards as a collector, and other people ended up with cards in their collection. Chris Sewell, who has seen everything, has cards that are keepers that are in his collection from that. So it was a pretty, it was a win-win for, I think, everybody.
It's really cool that you have a small piece of that Grail as your participant, even though you weren't one of the monetary backers of the whole thing. I think Mike and Chris, did you well in terms of whether it be compensation or however it was that you came away with some pretty cool stuff for your 70s collection, and you always remember that experience tied to those cards.
Yeah, it's not just 70s. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's hundreds of Bowmans from the 50s that are in there now. This is 65 top set. There's stuff in there. I got a Jimmy Fox Gowdy over there somewhere. So
Oh,
you know,
okay, okay.
there's some
Somewhere,
stuff in
yes.
there, but it's not
Yeah.
like
Okay.
it's not it's stuff. It's fun because they thought of me. Like they gave me a couple play balls, another Jimmy Fox play ball, and a Connie Mack because of the A's connection and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So there's meaningful stuff in there that
Sounds like a nice finder's fee. Yes.
yeah. And like I
Yeah.
said, I don't want to make a decision, keep or sell,
Right.
because that's not my, we all have different collecting styles, but it's to me, my goal of owning every card is still there. And it doesn't make sense if I'm not a ladder climber, and that's not a
Mhm.
derogatory term. It's just I don't bundle to move up because it's just not my I'm a set builder. So
Yep.
let's just keep getting as many cards as we can. I'm at a point in my life now where I have the basement to myself. The kids are grown and gone, so screw it. Let's fill it up with cardboard.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks for coming on and being our guest. Had
Real
a
quick.
great time.
Yeah.
The 70s are known for their long form music, so don't feel bad that we won 15 minutes over. Okay.
There we go.
Oh yeah,
That's
no.
what the
This is
70s were about. They were about
I wanted to get to that
okay.
the Grail
Gotcha.
story because it was so prominent within the YouTube and then the community that we have, and you played again that first initial role in what turned out to be something great for the people that that we know, including yourself. So I wanted to get that
Sweet.
story out there. So no, definitely. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. I again started collecting in the 70s, just like Dawn and you did, and it just that time period just brings back so many memories. So this was really enjoyable talking about that time period, not only in primarily baseball, but other sports, but in the hobby. So
Yeah, man, I appreciate you agreeing to come on. I knew it'd be good. You always got good stories, and it's always good to have a friend on here, man.
Hey, people don't realize one thing I'll leave you with. People don't realize how good the Pirates were throughout the 70s.
Yeah.
So that's something that if you don't know that, maybe go back and look. They won a couple championships in there, and they were competing throughout, which is rare for a decade of baseball.
From the early 70s to the late.
Yeah.
There was this team on the eastern part of the state that kept knocking them out, though.
A little later on, but yeah, I get you. But yeah, right on. You guys won enough in the 70s with the Steelers, so yeah.
True.
Sweet. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate
All right,
it.
man.
yep, and of course we're at the very end, and I forgot to mention to everyone. Of course, I will have a link to John's YouTube channel in the description of this video.
Nobody goes there,
but I think by now most people realize that there'll be a link. But hey, if for those of you who've made it past an hour and 15 minutes, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. And until next time, we'll catch you on the next episode of Two Guys, One Hobby.
Take care.